Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Yung Mass 1.1 ay it's all about role and direction, objective, scope of management accounting. It is purely theoretical. Yung handouts po ay may answer na po doon. So, I'm leaving it up to you, ladies and gentlemen. Please have time to go over the material and then answer the exercises or the test items there. Nandun na rin yung sagot. Kaya ako ay mag-start dito sa Mass 1.2.1. Ang management accounting ay ito ang branch ng accounting na it provides the information para sa mga internal users, management in particular. And this is all about providing concepts, tools, and techniques for planning and controlling, for performance evaluation, and decision making. That is those are the basic functions of management actually, ano? Yun pong mga managers, yun pong management, they are functioning or they are performing the basic functions of management, planning, controlling, decision making, kasama yung performance evaluation. Kaya yung management accounting po ay it provides tools and techniques that will be used for planning and controlling, for performance evaluation, and for decision making. If you are familiar with your syllabus in MAS, sa board examination under 1.0 management accounting, and then 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, yan po yung scope doon. Concepts and techniques for planning and controlling, concepts and techniques for performance evaluation, then concepts and techniques for decision making. Ito po, unahin natin yung concepts and techniques for planning and controlling. At ang unang topic natin ay cost, terms, concepts, and behavior. Ang cost ay walang specific use, ladies and gentlemen. An entity na may na-incur na cost or an entity is incurring cost every day and yung cost na na-incur ng isang entity, walang specific na use yan para sa mga managers. Para magkaroon ng specific use po yung cost, it must be processed to become information. Because the cost per se, in its initial form, that is data. It's data, no? Datum, data. It must be processed. One way to process that is to classify para maging information. Alam mo kinlassify natin by behavior, fixed and variable, magagamit na ngayon ng mga managers yung sa decision making, sa planning and controlling, yung fixed cost and variable cost. So, para magkaroon ng meaningful and specific use for management, the cost must be classified and described. There are many ways to classify the cost. Please be familiar, ladies and gentlemen, sa mga iba't ibang classification na narito. In this material, in this lecture, we are going to concentrate or focus on this classification, yung cost behavior, relationship to volume. How do cost vary or how do cost change pag nagbago yung activity? The cost is the effect actually. The cause is the activity. Ang ibig kong sabihin, walang mai-incur na cost pag walang activity. Dependent variable yung cost, kumbaga. Ang independent variable po yung activity. No activity, no cost. Ngayon, ang tanong, pag nagbago yung activity, sumasabay ba yung pagbabago ng cost? Or mayroon bang cost na kahit nagbago ang activity, constant pa rin yung total cost na yan? Yan nga ang ating gagawin sa cost classification by behavior. Variable cost, fixed cost, and mixed cost. And for planning and control purposes, the mixed cost must be separated into fixed and variable component. At the end of the analysis ng cost, actually, kailangan maklasify natin yan kung variable ba yan or fixed cost. So, ang ating iti-take up ay yung analysis ng mixed cost. How do we split the mixed cost? Etong cost terms concepts, may sagot na rin po, ano? So, I'm leaving up that to you. And hindi masyadong it's not complicated actually. It's not it's a simple matter or subject yung classification ng cost. Kaya concentrate tayo dito sa cost behavior, ladies and gentlemen. In particular, analysis of mixed cost. Be familiar sa linear cost equation. That is very important. Linear cost equation. Yung result ng ating analysis ng mixed cost, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to express that into linear equation y equals a plus bx. Y stands for the mixed cost or the total cost. A stands for the fixed cost or the y-intercept. B is the variable rate and X is the level of activity. Lahat ng ating analysis ng mixed cost ay we must be able to express in that linear cost equation, ladies and gentlemen. So the question now is, paano ba natin yan i-split yung mixed cost? Ito po. There are methods that make use of historical cost in the analysis. There are methods that do not use historical cost data. Sa syllabus ng board examination, ang nandun actually is yung etong tatlong methods na pag-split ng mixed cost using historical cost data. Ito po yung least squares at yung scatter diagram or visual fit at yung high and low point method. So, etong methods na to, etong tatlo na to, ang data na gamit dito is historical cost data. Yung cost na na-incur na ang ating ina-analyze. From the cost incurred, we are going to predict or we are going to develop a linear cost equation. We are going to split fixed cost and mixed cost into variable and fixed. Sa tatlong method na to, the most accurate is the least squares or the regression because this method proves the cause and effect relationship. Kasi dito, makukompute natin ang coefficient of determination and we can also determine the correlation coefficient, we can determine kung ano ang relative relationship ng two variables, x and y. So, this method provides the most accurate na analysis. Lahat ng data actually kasama sa observation. In contrast sa high and low point, ang high and low point, yung highest activity at saka lowest activity lang. Dadalawang activity ang ating ino-observe or ating kino-consider sa pag-analyze ng cost. Halimbawa, ina-analyze ninyo ang 12 months na overhead cost. January hanggang December. Pero pagdating sa high and low point, 2 points or 2 activities lang ang pipiliin mo doon. Highest activity at saka lowest activity. Yun lang isasama mo sa analysis. I-compare mo sa least squares na yung 12 na activity kasama sa observation, kasama sa analysis, ay talagang mas reliable at mas accurate nga yung least squares. Yung visual fit naman, all data din kasama. Yun nga lang, rough estimation ng cost because we do this by visual inspection or kaya nga visual fit ang tawag o regression line. I-graph mo yung cost and activity for 12 months halimbawa and then mag-drawing ka ng regression line. Basta ang criterion, the distances of the observations above the line are equal to the distances of observations below the line. And the regression line, kung saan yun, nag-intersect sa y-axis, yun na yung fixed cost. If you want to determine the variable rate, you take a change in activity, change observed in activity, tsaka change observed in cost, then divide change observed in cost divided by change observed in activity, ayun na ang variable rate. Well, compared sa high and low point, ay mas reliable yan, syempre. Dahil lahat ng information, kasama din, lahat ng data. Pero, syempre, with the advent of technology, hindi naman na mahirap yan actually. Pero kung mano-mano, syempre, yun po ang mag-visual inspection talaga dyan. Ngayon, dumako na po tayo sa illustrative problem ng ating high and low point, least squares, and we cannot illustrate the visual fit this time. Yung munang high and low point, and then yung least squares. Ayan. So, ito may sagot na rin, ladies and gentlemen, yung mga test items dito. For example, ito, sagutin natin, number 1. The simplifying assumption that cost estimation are based on include which of the following? Yung ating classification ng cost as fixed and variable, ladies and gentlemen, una, with the assumption na valid yan within the relevant range. Yung ating analysis, kung saan na-derive natin yung fixed cost and variable cost at ina-express natin into y equals a plus bx, on the assumption na within the relevant range or the band of activity within which the cost relationships will remain valid. For example, from 10,000 to 20,000 activity, valid yung behavior na ang fixed cost ay 100,000, ang variable rate ay 20 per unit. Beyond that point, beyond the relevant range, maaaring hindi ganyan ang relationship. To simplify our analysis, we assume relevant range. Second, we assume linear relationship. Kaya nga, ang tawag dun sa equation, linear cost equation. We assume linear relationship. Ang ibig sabihin yan, kailangan yung total cost, may graph natin on straight line. At para pwedeng mangyari yan, ang assumption natin, ang variable cost, constant per unit. Ang total fixed cost, constant. Para maging linear. Yung variable cost per unit, constant. That means, kung constant per unit yan, yung total naman, it varies directly, no? Sa level ng activity. directly proportional sa change ng activity. Yun namang fixed cost, constant in total, but expressed on a per unit basis, it varies inversely, but not proportionally. Well, in reality, you must not analyze fixed cost on a per unit basis. The caveat there, ladies and gentlemen, is you must not unitize fixed cost. It must be analyzed in total. Kasi nga, constant in total. You will be misled if you analyze that on a per unit basis. But just the same, ang behavior niyan, if you allocate the fixed cost to the activity, inverse ang magiging niyan. Pag nag-increase yung activity, ang variable cost, fixed cost per unit, magde-decrease and vice versa. So ulitin ko, ang assumption natin dyan, relevant range, linear relationship, at ito pa, yung ating classification of fixed and variable cost na ang variable cost ay constant per unit and varies in total in direct proportion to change in activity. Yung fixed cost na constant in total, short run assumption po yan. Kasi over the long run, lahat ng cost magbabago. Yung variable cost per unit na constant natin, over the long run, magbabago yan eh. Yung fixed cost natin na constant in total, over the long run, magbabago yan eh. Ika nga, ang constant lang dito sa mundo, yung change. So everything will change in this world. Kasama ang cost, siyempre. Pero to simplify our computation, we will assume na ang fixed cost, ganito, constant in total. Ang variable cost, ganito, variable in per unit. But that is valid within the short run. On a short run basis. And our last assumption ay the cost behavior depends on one activity. Except of course for multiple regression. Kasi pag yung ating linear cost equation na y equals a plus bx, that is based on the assumption na the cost depends on one activity. Kaya nga isa lang yung x doon eh. Isa lang yung x doon, activity. Okay? So, yun po ang mga assumption ng cost estimation. Yung coefficient of determination, ang ibig sabihin po niyan, yan yung degree ng correlation. Di ba, nasabi ko kanina, yung regression, it proves the cause and effect relationship. May measure natin yun sa pamamagitan ng coefficient of determination. Mine-measure yan kung ilang percent sa pagbabago ng cost, ng mixed cost in particular, ang ini-explain ng activity na ginamit natin sa analysis. It measures what percentage of the variance in cost is explained by independent variable x. And the higher is the coefficient of determination, the higher is the degree of the relationship or correlation. Kung lahat ng change ng cost ay ini-explain ng particular na activity na yan na ginamit mo, a perfect fit yon. And the coefficient of determination or R squared is 1.0 or 100%. Ang sagot po, letter D, A and B measures how well the line fits the data and it is a perfect fit when its value is 1.0. Multiple regression, one dependent variable and two or more independent. Two or more than one independent variable, of course. Number 4, correlation. It is a measure of the relative relationship between two variables. Number 5, if coefficient of correlation between two variables is 0, how might a scatter diagram of those variables appear? Tatlo ang types ng correlation, ladies and gentlemen. may tinatawag tayong positive correlation, may tinatawag tayong negative correlation, and then zero correlation. Pag positive correlation yan, ang relationship ng dalawang variable, x and y na lang in particular, x the activity, y is the cost, kasi cost analysis naman tayo. Pag nag-i-increase yung x or activity, ang cost nag-i-increase din. So the appearance in the graph ay upward sloping to the right pag positive correlation. Pag negative, downward sloping to the right. Nag-i-increase ang x, nagdi-decrease naman ang y. Pero kung zero correlation yan, wala kang ma-predict na relationship ng dalawang variable. As in, the points are randomly scattered in the diagram. You cannot predict a relationship in that case. Yan po ang zero correlation. No apparent correlation. Number 6, simple regression analysis involves the use of, kung simple regression class, one dependent, one independent. 7, in determining cost behavior in business, the cost function is often expressed as y equals a plus bx. Yan yung linear cost equation natin, class. Which of the following cost estimation methods should not be used in estimating fixed and variable cost for the equation? Yung graphic method, yan yung visual fit. Simple regression, yung least squares natin. High and low point, alam nyo naman yan, no? Yung result ng ating analysis for visual fit, simple regression, and then high and low point. We can express that in the equation y equals a plus bx, but not, of course, multiple regression. Kasi kung multiple regression, ang activity dyan, more than one eh. Ang independent variable, I mean more than one. So, the equation can be y equals bx1 plus bx2, bx3 plus bxn. Marami. It can be more than 5, etc., etc. Yung y equals a plus bx, pang ano lang yan, pang simple regression lang po yan. Next, number 8. Regression analysis is superior to other cost behavior analysis techniques because, ayan, it proves a cause and effect relationship. In fact, in that case, we can determine the degree of correlation by computing the coefficient of determination. Number 9, the term relevant range as used in cost accounting means the range over which the cost relationships are valid. Number 10, cost drivers are, yan po yung activities that cause the cost to increase as activity increases. Ito po, mag-illustrate na tayo ng high and low point na mauuna. Hindi naman ito mahirap. Isa ito sa pinakamadaling computation na na-encounter nyo siguro sa buhay ninyo sa accountancy. Ang criterion lang dyan, hahanapin mo ang highest activity at kukunin mo yung cost nun. Hahanapin mo ang lowest activity, kukunin mo ang cost nun. Huwag mong hanapin una yung highest cost at saka lowest cost. Kasi yung cost, dependent variable yon. Yung highest activity at lowest activity. Tapos kukunin mo lang yung cost nun. Kasi maaaring yung highest cost, hindi yun ang cost ng highest activity. Ang driver kasi dyan, yung activity. So, determine the highest activity, get the corresponding cost. Determine the lowest activity, take the corresponding cost. And then compute. Compute ninyo, highest cost of highest activity minus cost of the lowest activity divided by highest activity and the lowest activity. Yun po ang lalabas na variable cost per unit. Of course, bago mangyari yung analysis, ay nililinis muna yung data kasi maaaring mayroong data dyan na pangpagulo o yung tinatawag na outlier. So, the list or the data must be purged first. Remove all outliers first. Yung abnormal na observation. Kasi halimbawa, sa isang company, nagkaroon ng baha yung mga inventory. At syempre, marami silang cost na na-incur na overhead, halimbawa. Dapat hindi sasama yon kasi abnormal na relationship ng activity at saka cost yun. So, the first thing that you're going to do, remove the outliers muna. Kung sa bagay, dyan, wala namang outlier dyan. Sasabihin naman dyan kung may outlier eh. So, sa number 11, to determine the variable cost of operation per kilo of materials, the highest activity there is 175. Its cost is 16. Yan po, oh. Yan. The lowest activity is 25 and its cost is 400. So, 16 minus 400 divided by the difference ng 175 and 25, or actually that is 12 divided by 150. 12 divided by 150. So, the answer there is 8 pesos, 8 per unit. Yan. Yun ang variable cost per unit. Now, to determine the fixed cost of the operation, kahit alin doon ang gamitin ninyo, kung yung low or high, pwede naman. At high activity and at low activity, kahit alin doon ang gamitin nyo, class. The total cost at the highest activity and the lowest activity, kukunin nyo lang. So, for example, here, 400, and here, 1,600. Mixed cost po yan. May variable dyan at may fixed. Ang variable cost po dyan, it varies at 8 per kilo of materials. Ang activity dyan or driver, kilos of materials eh. Kaya, yung at lowest activity, at the low activity na 25, o di 25 times 8. Diba yan ay 200? Ma-minus nyo yan kasi yan po ay variable cost. Or, yung high activity na 175 times 8, that is 1,400, tama? $1,400. Kaya, yung ating fixed cost ngayon ay, kahit alin dyan ang gamitin nyo, actually, 200, pareho yan, dapat. Yan. Actually, kung common sense, makukumpit mo naman yan, masasagot mo eh. Kasi 200, alam mo naman na ang lowest cost na nga, 400. De, syempre, ang fixed cost malamang, less than 400. Yan po, ano? Ito, actual CPA board examination to class eh. Di natin alam kung kailan bibigay uli. Mas importante, alam nyo. At naditiyak ko, alam nyo naman ito eh. Nare-refresh lang naman natin. Next, using the least squares. Ito po, yung least squares ay gagamit tayo ng direct substitution formula. Kunin ko dito yung formula class sa handouts natin ha. Pwede nyong gamitin yung two least squares equation to a normal equation in the least squares na ito. Summation of y equals na plus b summation x, saka yung equation number 2. Or eto na mismo ang gagamitin natin, direct substitution formula. To solve for the variable rate or the B and then the value of A or yung fixed cost. Yan. At alam nyo, sa totoo lang, hindi lalayo yan sa kwan. High and low point. Okay, solve na natin, ano? B or the variable rate may be computed as follows. Yung N, it stands for the number of activity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, 7. Yung summation of XY, yan yung sum of the products of X and Y. Ito po yan, sum of the kilos times cost. Yan po yung summation of XY. Kasi ito po yung Y, X rather. Ito yung Y, yung cost. So, 852,500. That is our summation of XY minus the product of the summation of X or the sum of the activity actually. In this case, that is 700, sum of the kilos, ano? Yung 7 activities, isa summation lang yan. 100 plus 75 plus 25 plus 150 plus 175 plus 50 plus 125. Summation of the cost naman, i-add mo lang yan. 7,000. Yan. Then, divided by N, which is 7, times summation of X squared. So, ito po yun. Yung sum of the kilos squared, 87,500. Then summation of X, which is the 700 total activities, ano? Summation ng activities. 700 times 700. Ayan. So, if you're going to perform the computation there, you must be able to arrive at 8.71. That's rounded, of course, ano? Yan po. Ngayon, to solve for A or fixed cost, summation of Y over N, actually, this is mean of Y. Yung summation of Y, 7,000. Divided by N, 7. Average yan eh. Average of the cost. Yan. Minus B times average ng activity. Yung total activity natin, summation, 700 divided by 7. That's 100 actually, ano? Mean of Y or mean of the cost minus the product of the variable rate times the mean of the activity. Ayan. 7,000 divided by 7 minus the product of 8.71 times the average activity, which is 700 over 7. That's actually 1,000 minus 871. So that is 129. So, ang ating linear cost equation ngayon, if you're going to express the result of your analysis, the cost formula na tinatawag dyan ay in the form of y equals a plus bx. Cost formula natin dyan, y equals 129 plus 8.71x. So, gagamitin mo yan, halimbawa, for planning, for budgeting, for forecasting. Ito nga pinag-uusapan natin, techniques for planning and controlling. O, di kung ipapakompute sa'yo, halimbawa, please prepare a budget of the operation, cost of operation. If the activity or the level of material usage will be, let's say, 160, madali natin i-estimate. Ayan po. That is the cost formula, no? So, Isa-substitute mo lang kung ano yung activity na gusto mong computan ng budget or cost. Ayan po, isa-substitute lang sa X. Okay? So, itong sagot dito, 129. Ayan. Sagot naman dito, yung variability, average rate of variability, that is actually yung B, no? Value ng B. Ayan. Next, number 15. In regression analysis, which of the following correlation coefficients represents the strongest relationship between independent and dependent variables? Yung correlation coefficient, ladies and gentlemen, it can be positive or it can be negative. And the value of that cannot be greater than 100% or cannot be greater than 1. Yung negative or positive sign dyan, it merely indicates the type of correlation. So yung letter C, 89%. That's the greatest and strongest correlation coefficient. Hindi pwedeng isagot yung letter A, more than 100% na yan. Disregard the negative, dahil yung negative sign dyan, ano lang yan, type ng correlation lang po yan. Excuse me. Next, number 16. An auditor used regression analysis to evaluate the relationship between utility cost and machine hours. The following information was developed using a computer software program. So, alin ang ano dyan? Value ng A, B or variable rate at saka alin ang A or fixed cost. Ito ang cost formula dyan, class. The cost formula there apparently is ito po. Y equals yung intercept yan po yung fixed cost. So, Y equals 2,050. Yan yung value ng A, ano? Plus, BX. Yung B is yung regression coefficient, yung rate ng variability. 0.825. 0.825x. That is the cost formula there, no? So, if you want to compute the budget or the expected cost for using 10 machines for 2,400 hours, that's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Substitute nyo lang sa cost formula natin na Y equals 2,050 plus 0.825 ng 2,400 hours kasi X is 2,400 hours. So that will be 4,030, ano? 0.825 times 2,400, actually that's 1,980. Plus the fixed cost na 2,050, so that will be 4,030. Next, number 17. We will estimate the total overhead cost for 30,000 direct labor hours. The normal capacity is 40,000 hours. And the fixed overhead at the normal capacity is 40,000 hours. Well, even if activity is below the normal capacity, yan pa rin naman ang fixed overhead, 100,000 kasi constant in total po yan. Ngayon, yung variable overhead dyan, alam natin na ang variable cost ay constant per unit. So, the variable overhead per hour at the 40,000 normal capacity is 120,000, the total overhead. Divide nyo yan sa 40,000. That is 3. Constant po yan kahit ano ang level ng activity, basta nasa relevant range. So, the total overhead at 30,000 hours ay madali lang. 100,000 na constant, plus 3 times 30,000 hours. BX yan actually. Ayan. So, that will be 190,000. Madali, Hindi naman mahirap yung pag-estimate ng cost. Next, number 18. Using regression analysis, Sky Blue Company graphed the following relationship of its cheapest product line sales with its customers' income level. So, apparently, yung regression line, makikita nyo, downward sloping to the right. Habang nag-i-increase yung X, ito po, nagde-decrease naman ang Y. Negative correlation po yan. Negative relationship yan. So, pipili na lang kayo ng negative na correlation coefficient dyan. At syempre, hindi dapat hihigit sa 1 yung 1 value. Or hindi higit sa 100%. So, it should be letter B. 0.93 or 93%. Negative correlation nga lang. Next, number 19. Ang tanong is, which regression equation should be used? Dalawang activities ang involved sa analysis, by regression analysis. The first activity that was considered is machine hours as the driver. And you can see na yung R squared or degree ng relationship is 70%. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, 70% ng pagbabago ng overhead ay ang driver nun or ang cause nun is machine hours. Of all the total variance in overhead costs, 70% can be explained by machine hours. Whereas kung direct materials weight, 50% lang. Talagang mas maganda yung machine hours na gamitin. Mas mataas na degree of correlation, mas mataas na coefficient of determination, mas reliable at mas accurate na cost estimation. So we will use machine hours as the driver. So our regression equation must be y equals 2,500 plus 5.0x. If you want to estimate the cost, for example, ng certain level ng activity, say 100 machine hours, substitute nyo lang dyan sa 5 times the activity, 5x, as simple as that. Okay? Next, the cost behavior method that may use time and motion studies to determine the activities and amounts for cost behavior analysis is, nabanggit ko kanina na mayroong methods that make use of historical cost data, yung tatlo. Yung regression, yung visual fit, at yung high and low point. May methods naman na hindi gumagamit ng historical cost data. Ito po yung dalawa. Yung account analysis method at industrial engineering method. Yung account analysis, yan? Account classification method or subjective, kina-classify lang kung itong account na to based on my experience, yan ay constant, yan ay fixed. Ito naman, itong cost na to, variable. Subjective yan. Yung industrial engineering naman ay nagkakandak ng pag-o-observe yan ng time and motion studies. That is the engineering method. Okay, so yan po ang ating analysis ng mixed cost. Tandaan ninyo yung tatlo, paano isosolve, alin ang mas accurate, paano ang coefficient of determination, paano i-compute yung coefficient of determination, just in case ibigay sa examination, ito yung formula, tandaan nyo na lang yan, R squared or coefficient of determination ay malamang kasi bibigyan na rin yan yung estimated conditional standard deviation from the line of regression squared over the standard deviation from the average of all data. Yan kasi class, yung estimated conditional standard deviation from line of regression. divided by the standard deviation from the average of all data. Yan ang tinatawag na unexplained variance. Kaya 1 or 100% minus unexplained variance, yun ang explained variance. Yun ang variance na ini-explain ng activity na kinonsider natin or ginamit natin sa regression. Yung coefficient of determination, actually, explained variance yan eh. Yung unexplained variance, ito class, yung estimated conditional standard deviation from line of regression over the standard deviation from the average of all data. Halimbawa po kanina, doon sa may number 19, halimbawa tanungin po dito na what is the unexplained variance if we use the machine hours? 30%. Kasi 70% ng variance ng cost or pagbabago ng cost, literally yung variance, difference ang ibig sabihin nun, or pagbabago ng isang variable. 70% sa pagbabago ng cost, ini-explain ng machine hours, ganun lang yon. Yung 30%, hindi ini-explain ng machine hours. Ibang activity. Kaya lang kasi, pag analysis natin, pag traditional, in determining or determining the overhead rate per unit, under traditional, isang activity lang ang gagamitin natin eh. Unless we are using activity-based costing, na napakaraming activity rates. Pero ang ating traditional ay one activity. Okay? So, yan po ang ibig sabihin ng coefficient of determination. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Ang susunod nating lecture ay cost, volume, profit analysis, MAS 1.2.2. Thank you.